Okay, we're here with our guest, and as usual, we don't call names or say names, or we don't talk about business or brands or anything like that. It's just pretty much conversation back and forth, and we're going to get right into it. Guest, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great.
I'll say this evening for time's sake purposes. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I want to get right into it right away. I have a couple of different topics, and we're going to get to them as soon and as best as we can and cover as much of them as we can. The first topic or subject is going to be solving problems with communication, and the subtopic of that is going to be yes or no responses for clarity. And the second part of our interview was going to be going to church or staying home. So once again, part one, solving problems, communication, yes or no responses, and going to church or staying home. Anything about either of those subjects that bother you in any kind of way?
No.
Okay. All right. So let's jump right on it. And I'm going to start with a conversation that our audience doesn't know about. But you and I had a conversation yesterday, and we don't have to discuss the particulars of that. But if you remember, like I remember, when we started talking, you shared something with me. And then I had a conversation with you because I felt at that time I needed to, I don't know, listen to my brother and be as close to a brother as I could without sounding counseling like. But I think after we had the conversation, we both had some different information after we walked it through and talked it through. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And which brings me right to my point, solving problems with communication and yes and no responses. I don't know what has happened to me over the last few years, but I just feel this calling, to just communicate and talk and analyze situations, because I am convinced that there is no problem ever, particularly basic stuff. I don't know enough about politics and world issues to say what can't be solved, but everyone has a desire in their heart for world peace and to solve world hunger. And I believe every problem, we're intelligent enough as human beings that if we talk enough, if we listen enough, if we're compassionate and considerate enough, and even more so, if we are respectful enough of each other, that we can always get to the bottom. So there's no reason why there should ever be unsolved problems. Now, when it comes to someone's attitude and how they feel about a problem that has either been addressed and or attempted to solve, that's a whole nother story within itself. So I want some of your input on solving problems. If you can tell me, why do you think there are problems that are not solved, particularly in homes between people, husband and wife, brothers and sisters, and people, with jobs or whatnot, even in traffic? Why do we have so many problems unsolved?
Because people are selfish and always thinking of themselves and not compassionate, thinking of the other individual. They're always familiar with their feelings, but they're not in touch with the other person's feelings.
Okay, that definitely correlates with what I just said. And what do you think, would be an avenue to solve some of these problems, to bring about peace? I think if we have more individual peace, we can have world peace. But what do you think the answer is to solving some of the unsolved problems amongst, brethrens or sisterins?
Well, I believe that it's already been laid out for us as a believer. Okay? It's already been laid out for us. And because of the way we think, and the way we see and hear things, if we don't know, if I can refer to my instruction manual, that's where my wisdom comes from, to know what to do and what not to do when it comes to other people, when it comes to communicate, because I don't know it all, and neither does anybody else. There's only one person that knows it all, and that's the one that made me. So I always refer to this manual to get an idea of, find out exactly what it is that I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to handle it when I'm dealing with other people.
So what is the way? Yeah, how do we, what is the one way? If there was a one shot, if you could give me one sentence on how to solve problem? What is the best way to solve problems?
Listening, first of all, to the other person. 9 times out of 10, people already tell you, if you learn to listen to them with the understanding of not being so quick to add input, listen to them with your heart, not with your head. Sometimes we have a tendency to listen to one another with our heads, with the intent of getting a word in edgewise. But when you really listen to an individual with your heart, then you can really relate. You understand?
Sure.
You'll have a better understanding of how to communicate. And I think that's one thing we haven't really learned how to do, is really listen with our hearts. Because when we listen with our hearts, we're more compassionate, because we can relate. But when we listen with our heads, with distance, you know, it's my way or the highway when we listen with our heads and not our hearts.
Okay, I think that's a two-edged sword in its own way. Sometimes the heart can get us in a place, you know, that the head can get us out of, or vice versa. Sometimes when we listen with our heart, we get emotionally involved, and then we can't think. So I hear what you're saying. And when you're talking about compassion and being considerate, you know, I think that makes sense. But listening sometimes with your heart, how do you avoid being emotionally influenced by something when you allow your heart to be the guide?
Well, as I was sharing earlier, as I said earlier, I listened to the instruction manual, and it tells me, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So I already know, as a believer, to not allow my emotions, I can separate the two, not allow my emotions to get the best of me.
Okay, I think
what
you just said is being able to separate the two. That's a key nugget right there, being able to separate the two. So I get it now. It makes sense. And thanks for responding to that. You said listening with your heart, but then having the knowledge and understanding to know how to separate the two. Because if you listen only with your heart, it's easy to get caught up with an emotion. And if you only listen to your head, you almost can't hear the other person. So it kind of goes hand in hand. You have to be intelligent when you're communicating. And I think that would be the answer to the question I asked you in a nutshell. You solve problems by listening and hearing, and using your head and your heart, as well as knowing the difference and how to differentiate between your emotions and what you know. So that's good. I appreciate that. I have my notes here. Okay, now I have a way of responding, and I think when someone, and me included, when we want to convince someone, when you just made a comment about, your way or the highway, or my way or the highway, somehow or another, we want our way so much that it's hard to listen to what someone else is saying or thinking or feeling or even believing. But when you get down to yes or no questions, I think yes or no questions are important. And many people, I find, are afraid of yes or no questions, because a yes or no question doesn't give you the opportunity to be influential, in your way or the highway, your way of highway method. So what is your take on yes or no questions? I believe yes or no questions are very important when you're trying to get to the bottom of something. But I find, many people that I interact with have trouble with answering yes or no. They want to do so much explaining. And I think for the purpose of trying to convince or, to sway to sway their side of, to be, I don't want to get mixed up with my words. Just tell me, what is your opinion about yes or no questions or answers?
A question or an answer. If yes and no is fine, but we've been trained to add more to it. We want to give our perspective on it.
Trained by who? How? What do you mean we've been trained?
Well, by communication. The way we talk. We always want to explain as to why it's this way or as to why it's not that way.
Okay, when I talk about yes or no questions, I'm talking about at a time of conflict. Sometimes if two people are having a conversation and they're back and forth and they're in a good place, lengthy conversations and explanations, it works well. But when you're in a place of conflict, and that's where I that's where my work starts, with this new thing I'm into of analyzing, mostly during time of conflict. If two people are getting along and they're fine, you can talk and explain and justify and do anything you want to sway, a decision in any kind of way. But right at the time of conflict, yes or no's are very important. And yeah, and I think particularly when there's conflict or two people are not on the same page, yes or no makes a big difference and clears things up. Do you agree with that? If not, tell me why.
I agree with that.
What is the reason you think many people will avoid yes or no's? Because people say, well, it's hard. You can't say yes or no. Well, you can, you just won't sometimes. I don't like yes or no's, especially if my back is against the wall, or if I want to try to convince someone of something otherwise. But yes or no really cuts out, a lot of fat from an explanation or even a conversation or even a misunderstanding. And I'm big on yes or no's, even when, it involves me. Yes or no's without the ability to explain is another thing, because I set myself up, I like the idea of interviewing and analyzing. And I'll even go so far to even say interrogate, so I don't get, so my critics won't have an edge. Anyway, my point is, yes or no's are critical for me, especially at times of conflict. So, I guess I'll just, I'll be okay with that. At least you're not disagreeing that it's important to give yes or no's.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Okay. So I was making a point about, explaining. If you're, yes or no's without the opportunity to explain can be detrimental. So, in my interactions, with people, if I say, okay, you can have an opportunity to explain, but right now I need the yes or no, because I expect to be doing these interviews more often and more so off the record. Whenever I'm not on a live stream and I'm interacting with someone, I will make a comment, something to the effect of, okay, you can make your explanation, but right now I don't want an explanation. I'm trying to understand, so I need clarity on what it is I'm hearing. So, if you say to a person, I don't want to hear an explanation, that's kind of harsh and kind of maybe even unfair, if I could use that word. But if someone's trying to get clarity and or understanding, and they say, okay, yes or no, am I turning right or left? And then they may say, well, you need to turn. You need to know, rock solid. And that's just me. My personality is different, and different people have different ways of doing things. And I'm just going to speak about me. And I'm hoping that I speak for a part of, most people. Clarity is very important. So yes or no's for me are critical, especially whenever I'm trying to get, clarity on a situation. And I'll leave it on right there. I wasn't sure how that conversation was going to go, and I'm sure it will, spark many more conversations, as I go through, this process of interviews. But I guess I'll move on to the next thing. Do you remember when we on yesterday when we had that conversation? I think, when you were talking, and again, we don't want to get into the specifics of that, but I think when you made mention of it and I asked you some questions and you answered those questions, I think you answered your own question based on the yes or no's that I asked you. Because I think whenever you started, you were more into your heart and feeling. And I think it was my responsibility as your brother and as your friend to say, okay, well, hold on. I hear what you're saying, and I even understand. I was having compassion for, what you were thinking and feeling. But I really wanted you to see the realization of what was going on and get out of, how you were feeling. And I think, I'm going to give myself not a pat on the back, but it's like being there to hear you and then show you a different way to look at it. Because I didn't want to convince you either way. You still had your own thoughts at the end of that. But I think you were able to see it in a different way. And thank you for allowing me to kind of show you a different option. Not that you couldn't figure it out yourself, but I do know that you were more into your heart, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we have to have a balance. So, go ahead.
No, I agree. I agree. And you have to be open, when you're talking to other people and so forth and what have you, when you're communicating with another individual. You have to be willing to look at things more than one way, because it's not just in one way to look at it. There is a right way, there's a wrong way. It's just like up and down, left and right, yes and no.
Hot and cold.
Right. And we've gotten away from that when it comes to other people. So we have to understand that we're all unique, we're all different. But when you're communicating, you have to be open. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
To what another person is saying, and not be so quick to offer a suggestion.
Right.
It's listening. Listening is probably one of the hardest skills that we have to learn how to develop, because a lot of us really don't listen.
Right, and listening openly is even harder than that.
So I'm learning also on my own to listen more. I like to talk, but I think I gather more when I learn to listen. To listen,
And I'm going to say this.
You don't have to say anything. You can listen.
Sure.
You don't always have to have a word. You can listen.
Right, I agree. Before I go on, we're going to get on to the next subject. I think, and I'm going to say this in closing so we can get on to the next subject. Having the desire to have our way and not be viewed as wrong or inaccurate or incorrect is a natural human behavior. We don't ever want to be wrong, or we don't ever want to take responsibility for something that's not necessarily good. And it's natural to deflect, in situations when it's, when yes or no's are on the line. And I just want to say to my audience and to myself and, even to you, it's okay to not be right all the time. It's okay to look at a situation and say, okay, I know what I was thinking, but maybe I should have thought, in a different way. It's very difficult to admit when we're either wrong or incorrect. And I think we need to be okay with knowing that, okay, my thoughts may be, how I feel. They may be based on my desires, but it may not necessarily be realistic. And it's okay to analyze it. And our brains are really fast, faster than the computers we use. We can think really fast to say, okay, this is, like you said, you got to be able to separate the two. Is this me, or is this the truth and reality? So I'll close on that unless you have something else to say. Hopefully I made some kind of point or brought awareness to, how communication, listening, and hearing is important. So unless you have something else to say, I'll go ahead and close and move on to the next. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next thing is this: going to church or staying home. I'm going to let you jump out the box on what you think that means or where you think I'm going. You just speak on going to church or staying home with whatever comes to mind right now.
Going to church, as people, is the one time that supposedly we get a chance to gather around a group of individuals that have the same mindset or there for the same purpose. Okay? Whereas when we don't go to church, we don't have that mindset with the other individuals, because we don't know who we're around. Everybody has different beliefs. Everybody has different stances. So we look forward to that, because that's how we've been taught to come together, to not forsake the gathering with ourselves together, by coming together in church and listening to the minister who's supposed to be sharing with us the instruction manual. And we're supposed to be taking that instruction manual and applying it to our lives. It helps us to go back out into this world that we live in, if we're applying it, and deal with everyday life and win, because we'll have a different mindset. Okay?
Okay.
That's the way I look at it. And it's a choice. I mean, especially in this, with everything that's going on right now, some people in fear, you know what I'm saying? Because they don't want to go to church because of this, and then they want to stay at home. It's almost like we're being trained to isolate ourselves.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm kind of down the middle of the fence on this, and I'm not taking one side or the other as of yet. But what I just heard you describe could be the same as a football game. There are people who come together for like-minded thoughts and who believe the same thing. They believe 10 yards, will get you a first down. They believe, their team is, going to outperform the other team. Those things are the same. So, the principles of, when you're not forsaking the brother and the other fans when you go to a football game. I mean, I know it's not church as we know it, but everything you just described about going to church and assembling in church is the same as if you go to a social function. No or yes?
Pretty much the same, I would say. But the difference is the subject matter. See, when we go to a game, we're going there for the team, to see our team play, okay? But when we're going to church, we're going to gather information for our own lives. For our own lives. It's a difference.
So, there are people who don't think going to church is the best or the only place that you can gather information for your lives. What are your thoughts about that?
And that is true. That is true. You don't necessarily, because you are the church, you don't necessarily have to go to church. But I would encourage everyone to go to church. You follow me? Because everybody's not going to read the instruction manual on their own. You have to have someone to teach you.
Question on that note, before you go.
And schools and so forth, what have you. You don't necessarily have to go to college. You can pick up a book and learn for yourself. But you've been trained, if you want to be this certain discipline, you have to go to school and learn about it. And you have to spend a lot of time doing it. And you have to pass tests to show that you've learned about it before they will allow you to begin to do it.
In regards to learning, what is the primary thing you think church teaches? What is the substance or the primary thing that you think you learn from going to church?
You learn that there is a God. He created you. You learn as to why things are the way they are right now, that everybody has a free will, and this free will came as a result of them exercising it from one man, learning about the knowledge of good and evil. That's why you see what's going on right now. But you learn that you always have a choice. You always have a free will to choose, either right or wrong. And you learn the right is in the instruction manual. It teaches you how to choose right or wrong. It teaches you how not to be selfish, to be selfless when you're dealing with other people, because they have different mindsets.
What is the one thing?
Levels.
What is the one primary thing you think church teaches? And I know churches teaches, many things, and the instruction manual is broad, and that's why you can go every time and hear something different. But what is the primary essence or primary thing that a person can look for that they're going to get, or a church is designed to make sure that a regular churchgoer get? What is the main thing? If you could give me one thing, or all those things concentrated in one, what would it be more like?
It teaches you who you are, what your purpose is. So many people are searching because they don't know who they are. They're looking for their purpose. And it teaches you that you have a purpose. God created you with a purpose. And the only way to find that purpose is through Him. And you have to give an account of what you did with this purpose in this life. One day. That's what it teaches me. That's in one nutshell. That I have a purpose. And no matter what, the only way I'm going to discover that purpose is through Him. The church may introduce me to that. So then I get into its instruction manual and I learn my purpose and I fulfill it. And that's where I will have joy. That's where I will be fulfilled. And you'll find out your purpose is not just for you. It's for the benefit of others. And you'll be more fulfilled than you would as if you had gained something just for yourself.
Right. As a churchgoer myself, I notice there's different parts of church. I participate in church. often, particularly as a musician. I was once also a part of the communications department, so I go and I participate myself. But one thing that everyone that has ever been to church or associate church with is tithe and offerings. Going to church and tithing and offering. How important is it to tithe and make offerings to church? And here's part two of that question. If you don't participate in that part, like I participate in, the music and the communications ministry, tithing is not necessarily a ministry that I know of, but it is a part of the participation, in church. I'm not on the ushers, so I don't participate in that part. And there's some people may not participate, in being a deacon or, a parking lot attendant or anything like that. But then, another part of church is giving the offering and the tithing. Some people refuse to sing or clap or even stand up. But, you don't get on the people for not participating in the other areas of, church attendance. But tithing and offering seems to be something that is either frowned upon or is just something that's a no-no that you cannot go and not participate in. What are your thoughts on attending church and or tithing or not tithing or offering?
Well, when you tithe and give your offering, you're doing it because of what the word says in Malachi. Will a man rob God? It's not in the church. Is a building that you come to fellowship with. And it's not like they have people from the outside pouring in, giving them money to keep on the lights, take care of the benches that you're privileged to sit on, the electricity and so forth, what have you. So when you bring your tithes, 10% of your earnings or your offering, you're protecting also your finances, because there's a curse on this world, on the finances and so forth. Some people succeed and some people don't. But that's why we do it as believers. He says, bring all your tithes into the storehouse and prove me. Okay, now we're already blessed, but a lot of people don't know exactly how to access the blessing.
I think the key word you just said, is believers. Because, and then you have different levels of believers, right, that do it. And people do that because of what they believe, not so much right, because of what, I guess, or whatever, you can believe something and it can be true or not true. But I think the right, key word there in what you just said is a believer, because a person that believes anything will participate in whatever that belief is, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, true or false. Right, I think the key right, is what you believe. And I thank you for saying that. And I caught it. Some things are taught, bought, sought, and caught. I think I covered them all. And I just caught that. Most people who believe that. Let me just ask you this question. There are people, and I'm not one of those people who don't, but there are people who don't believe, in tithing. What are your thoughts about a non-believer in that particular aspect or tradition?
I have to respect that. I wouldn't argue with that, as I said before. You know what I'm saying? Because that wouldn't affect me. That's that individual. He has a free will. He's able, that God gave him a free will to choose. And if he doesn't believe in that, then that's him. I wouldn't fuss and fight with him over it, because that's him. I can't tell him what to do and what not to do. He has to resolve that within himself. But I know that I do. That's the difference. You have to separate when you're dealing with people. Everybody's not going to believe what I believe. Everybody's not going to see things the way that I see them, and I have to understand that, respect that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't affect me because they don't. Mm-hmm. You follow me? But I will affect them because they're used to someone trying to confront them and ask them as to why don't they think this way? Why don't they believe this? And I'm not going to do that. I don't have to do that. I respect them because I want them to respect me.
So go ahead. Before going on this topic, I did talk to a few people, and I've, throughout my life, I've heard people have different, thoughts, views, and comments about, everything, not just church or tithing or, or even communicating styles, as we were discussing. But there are people who have a slightly different belief, in terms of, giving for, the laws of reciprocity, or for, as what we call modern day, paying it forward. There are some people who believe that, you're supposed to do good unto others, into the strong bearing the infirmities of the weak, and helping other people and giving in certain ways from your heart. So, there are people who particularly are believers who believe in tithes and offering specifically and particularly to the church. And there are people who either may or may not believe the same thing, but have a way of extending their blessings and sharing with others. So I guess my specific and direct question is, for a person who is either a believer or not a non-believer, based on what we're discussing here, that will or will not, tithe or make an offering to a church in particular, but will maybe donate to a homeless shelter, or will give to the Goodwill, or will do things like that. What do you think of a person who has a really good heart, who either may not even know anything about a particular religion that subscribes to tithing and offering, but they give from their heart, but don't tithe at all? And when I heard you talk about the curse, I wasn't sure if you were talking about the believers tithing curse, or just being the world in general. But let's just say a person who knows nothing about a specific religion, but their own conscience realize that, okay, if someone's hungry, I'm going to feed them, or if someone needs help with something, I'm going to help them financially, or give them clothes, or something like that. What are your thoughts about a person who believes that is a form of tithing? Is it or is it not?
It's a form of tithing. Giving is always a form of tithing. It may not be a tenth. Tithing is giving a tenth of your total income. But that's all, giving. That in and of itself lets you know that same person has that principle on the inside, but you just can't do that in and of yourself. You follow me?
Sure.
So, there's nothing wrong with that. You follow me? See, and you have to be able to separate the two. As a believer in church, this is what we do, tithing and so forth. But if another person is just giving to orphans and so forth, what have you, I couldn't come against that and say that's wrong. You follow me?
Right.
That right there within itself would lead to him probably giving to the church, because he's already a giver. He's already giving to the orphans. He's already given out here and given out there. It's just like when you go to a football game. Here's another take on it. You gave for the ticket. You gave for the sodas, hot dogs, and you don't think nothing of it.
Let's not forget the pizza.
And the pizza, yeah.
And the beer for the beer drinkers.
That's your tithes and your offerings.
I say and the beer and the beer
ticket for the game.
And the beer for the beer drinkers.
Yeah, that your tithe might have been, the ticket for the game, and then your offering might have been the beer, the soda, the franks, the hot dog, the pizza, so forth. Because that's in addition. You gave that in addition, and didn't think nothing about it. And you were the beneficiary of it, because it was all for you. It wasn't for anybody else. That's the difference.
Right.
It was all for you. You're the one that benefited from the beer. You're the one that benefited from the Coke and the hot dogs and the pizza and so forth, what have you. And you do it all the time.
Corn dogs, pretzels, hamburgers.
And there's no chapter and verse about that, but you do it because it's a principle. Giving. Okay, if you want this, okay, you pay my ticket to come in here. You cannot come into this game unless you buy this ticket. All right? That ticket gives you a pass to, other things. But those other things, you're going to pay for that. That's your offering. And you do that all the time and prepared for it. You have no problem with it.
So I want to change gears for a moment. What constitutes church membership? Is it tithing, or the fact that you chose to be on the roll at that church? You joined one Sunday after, before the benediction at the altar call. Is tithing, because I spoke with someone the other day that said, okay, if you don't tithe, then they don't consider you a member of a church. This was an actual conversation that I had with someone. They say, I don't go there anymore. And they say, when you stop tithing, then they stop counting you as a member. That's sad. That's sad. Tithing doesn't make you a church member. You became a part of that church. You accept, you came up and you said, I'm going to attend this church. They acknowledge you, put your name. You know what I'm saying? This is such and such. He's a member of the church now. And that was that. A tithing
It's the same thing in the church. You can teach that, but if a person chooses not to tithe or give offerings, that's that person's choice. It has nothing. You don't have to make them feel guilty and feel bad because they're not tithing. You shouldn't exclude them. Tell them that they're not a member, because that's religion. That's
right, but it's not people don't necessarily exclude them. You just said yourself, based on how someone believes, a person may be tithing out of fear because they believe that they are going to be cursed if they don't give a certain amount. Yeah. So I mean, of course, church officials, church leaders in particular, will maybe ostracize someone or don't acknowledge them to the same degree if they're not tithing members, so to speak. But what a person believes, a person may believe they're cursed, and because they are afraid, they may do it. So does and it's based on a belief. What happens to people who don't believe? Are they still cursed? Yes or no?
A person that doesn't believe, they're under a curse. They may not be aware of it. They may not know it. You follow me? But it doesn't change because you're a believer or non-believer. You just may not know it. You follow me?
Right, and there are people who not. There are people who
you don't have to be under that curse when you tithe. As a believer, you're giving and so forth. Your finances protected. Your needs are met. You want for nothing. As you renew, it comes with a renewal of the mind. It's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. But I don't condemn a person for not tithing and giving and so forth, what have you. You follow me?
Right.
I would never do that to a person and tell him that he's not this, that, the other. And if he or she asked me, I would make them aware, of the things that they're opening themselves to, because of the God of this world is Satan. He's a fallen angel. You can't see him, but you see his handiworks, sickness, disease, all these negative things you see taking place. So to protect you against that, God has created a system. He says he's redeemed us from this curse. He knows we have to live here, and the main area is finances. People are working for money, because money is what we use in exchange for goods and services, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so, but I would never, ever make someone feel, bad and condemn them and, judge them because they didn't tithe or whatever. Because, see, here's the dividing line, fear. If God hasn't given us the spirit of fear, who am I to try to instill fear in someone's heart? That's
okay,
wrong.
let me answer that real quick. Let me answer that. If you're saying that, a person that may not want to, it's not about what you want. Again, we had that discussion on yesterday. But let's just say, a person, because like I said, I've spoken to many different people on this subject, and I'm sure it's not the last time I'll have an interview or live stream on it. But there are people who specifically give out of fear. And maybe God didn't give it to them, but based on what they believe, there's supposed to be a curse if you don't tithe to a church or tithe to an organization like a church or give an offering, that there's a curse. You just said you're under a curse. Well, nobody wants to be under a curse, but if a person does not believe or don't want to, let's just say, as opposed to finding a church, or even if I'm not a member of a church or giving to a church, let's say I would rather give to the homeless shelter instead, but because I'm afraid, not because I have the spirit of fear, because that's just what I've been taught to believe, that there's a curse going to be on me. So what happens is this: in my heart, I don't want to do, this thing. But then if I don't do it, I believe I'm going to be under a curse. So I do it. And, that cheerful giver, I'm doing something with a grudge, and I don't want to do it. So how does that work? It's kind of confusing within itself.
Okay.
And I think, and this is derived from a bunch of different conversations that I've had with other people, and even myself. I've struggled with, not necessarily the belief as much as, other things that people have questioned, because as a, how do I say this? When people ask me questions about certain things, I don't have some of the answers that some of the experts or people who subscribe even more intensely so than I do myself. So I don't have answers. So when people ask me questions like maybe what we're discussing now and I don't have answers, naturally I kind of question and I don't know where to get answers from, because I know some people believe you can talk to God and he talks back, but I can't just say, okay, God, just tell us this. We've got to use wisdom and just maybe figure it out or whatnot. But
it's real simple.
It is?
I say it's real simple. I should be careful how I say that. It's real simple for me because I've been doing it for a while. We have an instruction manual. Every time you read that instruction manual, God is speaking to you. The more time you spend with it, the easier it will become to discern and understand what's being said.
That goes like for, I hate to cut you off. Hold on a second. Stop for a second. I don't, that goes for, computers also. There's a construction manual for a computer. Anything you spend more time with, you're going to be more convinced of it and a believer of it. And just so happened, the Bible is the Bible and it's sacred in its own way and it's protected by, people who believe and who are fearful. But, someone's religion can be, growing, fruit or vegetables. The more you spend time with it, the more you're going to know about it and the more you're going to be convinced of whatever that teaching is. So not to say that the Bible is not sacred, because I believe it, it is sacred. But, people that subscribe, like, as a musician, I spend time with my horn anyway. And I know it a little better than, someone else who might know car engines. So a person who spends more time with the Bible, they're definitely going to have a little more knowledge. But I find a level of, because the Bible is the Bible and it is sacred, it seems to be maybe placed in a higher status than everything else that someone may want to study or subscribe to. And the rules for, religion and or Bible study within itself seems to be higher than everything else. Is it or is it not?
It is. It is, because of the importance of you knowing who you are. Okay, so with that being said,
people that either study the Bible, that are Bible scholars, or people that are, in a high level of religion, I don't want to say they're better, but I just use the term, it's a higher level of important. I mean, better is not the right word, but it's right. Set aside in a different way. I'm having trouble with that myself, and I'll just go ahead and say it's like, I don't have the desire to study the Bible as much as someone else will. I mean, I was brought up in a Christian home, and I have Christian values, and I continue to practice them, to the best of my ability, and I think I do pretty good. I don't, and if I'm no better than anyone else, then why does being a Bible scholar or a Bible professional or even a minister or a priest so much different than someone who studies, auto mechanics? Because
that's what. Go ahead. I apologize. I didn't let you finish.
No. Go ahead.
Okay, that's the difference between religion and a relationship. A relationship is what you and I develop over a period of time. The more time we spend together, the more we begin to know about each other. We develop a solid relationship, to where as you begin to know more about me and I begin to know more about you. And that's what the Bible was designed for. It was designed to introduce us to God Almighty, reveal to us who our purpose is, and enable us to know how to navigate through life. It was never meant to be big U's and little I's. You know what I'm saying? That's not what it was designed to. People have taken it and done that.
Well, hold on. For the sake of time, I get that. I'm saying now that there's definitely and there's clearly a special place for those individuals who either participate in church or who study the Bible more so. And you just kind of said it without saying it. And I don't want to hold you to anything you didn't say, but it is a little more, you know, it is a little more special. It's a little different, you know, than a person who studies auto mechanics, because a person who, you know, studies auto mechanics is just as passionate about what they know about auto engines as a person who knows more about, you know, the studies of the Bible. But a person who studies the Bible, based on what you're just saying, it might even be held in a higher regards than a person who studies auto mechanics. No?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I would. I mean, you know, because the Bible is full of life for people, answers for people. It's not just for me, myself, and nobody else. You know, it has a way of reaching the hearts of people to solve. We started out solving problems, right? It's a problem solver for people. People are looking for answers.
Is it a problem solver or the problem solver?
The problem solver. There you go.
Okay, no. So then that means there are no other ways to solve problems?
That is one of the best ways. There are other ways, but that is the best way. The best way, because it deals with the individual. It reveals to you what your purpose is, who you are, and why you are confronted with things that you're confronted with.
Right. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Listen, we could go on.
You're going to have to be careful with that, too, because
of course you do.
Everybody has a different take. Okay? And I always want to be mindful of that. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I was about to say we could go on, and we're definitely out of time, and I hate to stop so cold, but, you know, we're going to have to end. I'm not sure I made a point in anything, but, you know, healthy discussion is good healthy discussion. And I look forward to, you know, interviewing and communicating with you and other people as I continue, you know, with my live stream. So I'll just say thank you so much for your time. We're going to go ahead and shut down.
Okay.
I love you to no end. Yeah, no doubt. Hopefully we can do it again. Now, I made you promise last time that you would come back and do it again.
We will.
I can get you again?
Just let me know. Yes, you can.
Okay, I appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon. Have a fantastic evening, and find somebody you need to say I love you to. Don't just say it, but find a way to show it to them, okay?
Amen. I most certainly will. All right.
10-4.
Bye-bye.